Before we go on to discuss what it's like to deal with these insurance companies, let me first review my intent of these videos. I need to make a convincing argument. I need to help you to understand that it really is the ability of these insurance companies to amass these tens of billions of dollars every year of profit at the expense of our health, and the tactics by which they do so that are bringing on most of the problems in our health system today. And if we could do away with their ability, most of these problems would then go away. And that we can do away with this ability. And that until we do, we will never feel the full benefit of health reform in our country. And that you will never, ever fully get what you're paying for in your health care dollars. Because these corporations are taking your money. They're taking money from our health system and giving it to shareholders. And they're taking it for their pleasure. And we're talking about a lot of money. And I'll give some figures later on. I need you to understand this so that we can all band together. Americans with a common understanding and a common goal can do anything. And we can change this system, and we have to. Okay, now, let's get back to that physician we were talking about. So this physician that's just opened their practice and just realized that they have to deal with these insurance companies. Not because they want to, mind you, but because they're coerced into this system that we seem to be stuck with. And one that needs to be changed. And keep in mind that no physician in their right mind would allow these insurance companies to come into their office and impose these barriers, these obstacles which result in wasted time within that physician's office, wasted resources, and therefore wasted money, all too often interfere with recommended patient care. And when these insurance companies do reimburse the physician, the reimbursement is all too often too little, too late. We only deal with these companies because we have to. Imagine how more efficient their office would be without that system. Imagine how morale in that doctor's office would go up. Imagine how less infuriated doctors would be with this system. And imagine how patients would be less infuriated and less demoralized. But let's consider what's involved with that doctor now signing on with these insurance companies. So for each of these insurance companies, and often there are going to be perhaps a dozen companies that the physician is going to have to sign on with and provide for. They have to undergo a credentialing process and sign a contract. Now, I won't go into a lot of detail about the credentialing process, but basically it involves filling out numerous pages, a lot of time, quite a hassle. It's not as bad now that it can be done on a computer and online, but it's still a hassle. But anyway, I mainly want to talk about the contract. The contract. This is not a normal contract. A normal contract involves two parties coming together with on a more or less level playing field with voluntary negotiations until they reach some common ground and one that they can both live with and benefit from. And that's their contract. That's not what we're dealing with here. This is considered an adhesion contract. Now, an adhesion contract is one where one party, that's the insurance company, through superior economic power, has the ability to impose its will upon the other party. That's the physician. Now, these contracts are one-sided. They're pretty much take it or leave it. There's very little negotiating room because the insurance companies have all the power. They've cornered the market. And the contract is loaded with terms which put a great financial advantage into the hands of the insurance company. Because that's what they do. They make money. And the physician tends to suffer, and the patient tends to suffer. All right, now of these terms, I mean, there's so many of them I can't memorize them all, and I don't have time to discuss them all. But of the ones I'm most concerned, they include ambiguities allowing delays in payment, unilateral amendments, attempts to conceal the reimbursement scheme, attempts to lock in reimbursement rates, silent PPOs, hold harmless clauses, all products provisions, carve-outs, gag clauses, and the list goes on and on. They basically vary from state to state because certain states have mandated that some of these are illegal, so they'll have one set of these terms for one state and another for another state. It's kind of interesting in a way. Basically, they do whatever they can get away with to maximize their profit. Of course, the main term, one that's common to all of these, is that the physician be only allowed to receive a discounted payment, which is mandated by that insurance contract. Now, I'll tell you something about that payment. This insurance reimbursement is often less than what it costs to provide that service. I'm not kidding you. I'm not being overly dramatic. The payment is usually less than what it costs to provide the service. And here we're just talking about private insurance, most private insurances. Medicare is significantly worse than them. And don't get me started with Medicaid. Medicaid is a lot worse than Medicare.